Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi, and welcome back to That Trippi Show with my co-host Alex Sashlow. He's back, folks. Thanks to
Been a
Joe
minute
Costello.
since I've heard that intro, man. I've just been
Thank,
hearing you say it on Spotify.
yeah, well, I want to thank Joe Costello, Reed Galen, and Trivy Olson for filling it in while Alex has been out. And then, Alex writes the intro, so it's like, hey, Alex, lots to catch up on. Where do you want to get started? Well, where I want to get started is we all want a little stork report here. How's it going?
Yes, very well. Thank you. I appreciate everyone who's been kind of pitching in to help. Mama and baby are doing very well. As I told you pre-show, still learning how to sleep. We could turn this into a dad podcast pretty easily, but I'll just say this. I thought I was happy before. And it is just, and I know a lot of people listening are parents. I know you are too. You have no idea. So I have that happiness and that perspective. So that's been great. I will say a couple of our listeners have been sending emails in saying that the last couple shows have been their favorite in a while. I have you on a list.
Yeah, right.
We're not answering any of your future
I think
ones.
that was
I can't.
me. It was
Gonna say your burner emails.
Yeah. Hey, so that's all
Yeah,
great
let's
news.
get into
Everybody's
it.
happy
Yeah.
for you and for the family, and you were sorely missed. But let's get on with what you want to catch up on.
Yeah.
I mean,
We have some fun stuff today. First of all, we're recording this day early this week, but so last night, Tennessee 7, which is my parents' district. Kind of funny enough, my mom called me, said she was on her way to vote, wanted to know how close we think it would get. Answer was close. Not I think too close for Republican comfort. Joe, what'd you see last night in that special election for Congress?
Well, look, it's a Trump plus 22 district, and yeah, it was single digits, 9 point loss. But when you lose a 22-point Trump district by 9 points, that spells problems. I just explain one. So Payne won, basically scored about 13.7% above Harris, so outperformed Harris by 13.7. If you extrapolate that and then go to every district out there, all 435, and basically have Democrats outperforming by that same number, 13.7. It turns out that's a 258 seat majority in the House of Representatives.
Holy cow. That's 258?
258. Now, look, it's not going to be 13.7 everywhere. But, you and I have been talking a couple of weeks back before the blessed event that I was hoping, like, could we get a 12-point generic margin going? And we saw 7 in Virginia, 5-point over performance in New Jersey statewide, and this is a Republican, ruby red, 20 plus 22 Trump district, and it's 13 points over. So my point is, look, if it's 10 or 9, that might be somewhere in the 240s. But this is a big problem. Trust me, the Republican Congressional Campaign Committee and Johnson and a lot of members of the House went back, looked at their districts, saw that they won by 9 points or 7 points, and are having a little bit of stomach concern when they woke up to these results. This is not. This is something that should just freak them out. Which, by the way, I think this is another step in the slow erosion of Trump. Of sort of standing up to Trump and surviving. I think there'll be a lot like Marjorie Taylor Greene has done in terms of just not giving a damn and and saying what she wants. The 216 people, Republicans who sided with Democrats in Ro Khanna, on releasing the Epstein files. I think this is going to cause a lot more, at least a little bit more trepidation that brings more of those people over. Because frankly, in the end, they now know that they're looking in the mirror and seeing if they're in a district that's less than, that they didn't win by 14 points, they're not safe.
Well, I mean, think about these two quotes. And this is, well, these are both, I think it's Politico. It was too close, said a source in House GOP leadership. But this is my favorite. This is a House Republican. 2026 is going to be a bitch.
Yeah, that's what they all, exactly. Look,
they're doing that math too, man.
This puts so many districts, you pointed out, like in Missouri, and with people like Doug Jones running in Alabama now. I mean, for governor there, but it makes a lot of these, particularly in the House districts, when you look at them. I think it was the Cook report or somebody. Where was the one that talked about put Missouri 2 in the mix, is saying districts like that one were now in play, and that was only after Virginia and New Jersey, not after. After this, those are all in play.
Well, now you start thinking, okay, we've been talking. I mean, I remember this must have been early October, maybe even earlier, where those first kind of Dem +5, Dem +6 generics started coming out, and I said, okay, we'll wait and see. Then it was like +8, +9. Yeah. I think since then we've seen them higher. Folks, last night was D+13 is basically how that math works. So if you're all the way there, then yeah, that 258, Joe, I'm not sure I'm ready to take the over on 257.5 House seats, but I mean, if it were tomorrow, it might be that way.
Yeah, no, that's not my point. More is, okay, so let's say it's an 8 generic. That's like you can do all these calculations on the generic and run them across those districts. It's still like anything over 5 is a really good indication that that would be a tight majority, but the Democrats would win the majority. So if you get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, as it keeps going up, you start 3 seats here, 6 seats there, and it really explodes if you get into these double-digit kind of gaps that we saw in Tennessee. And it's not like that district was some sort of anomaly in terms of it was a moderate Republican district, moderate held it. No, this is a ruby red Trump +22.
It's the woods outside of Nashville.
You can't say, hey, of course that happened there. No, it's not even like this. I mean, Virginia, you might be able to say, hey, it goes back and forth, that kind of thing, but not this district. So this is I think, it's why you're seeing Republicans react. They're not celebrating on the other side at all.
Well, then you add up like Trump saying again, I think affordability is the greatest con job, which again, I don't think he knows how much anything costs. It's a Democrat hoax is what he said. He doesn't want to hear about it. I mean, you start looking at things like every recession indicator, which by the way, we're kind of having to guess a little bit because of the whole like Trump shutting down a lot of the statistics coming out. But this is one I saw from Black Friday, which I thought was pretty wild. Basically, of all the purchases, 95% were on credit cards, which is not entirely off base for years past, but then only 2/3 of those people intend to pay them off. So that means we've got 1/3 of the like $13 billion that was spent on Black Friday is going to be on credit. People are going to be paying interest on it. You got your layoffs at your Amazons and your big corporations. The jobs report that came out today was rough, or yesterday at this point was rough. You add all that up, man, it is that 258 seats. Okay, we'll talk.
No, here's what's going to happen. That's true. The thing that's going to happen now is the Fed will lower rates next week, probably. the market, the reason it shot up on the bad jobs numbers is because all they were interested in, they don't really care about the jobs number. They care about that means there's going to be a rate cut. I mean, that's why whenever it's really an interesting thing that the worse the job numbers are, the more the market actually goes up.
Yep.
Particularly in an inflationary time, because one, they know interest rates are going to go down, and two, they know that they don't have to lower their prices, right? It's you blame inflation and you just let everything keep going. So Trump Trump fueled all this with the tariffs and everything else, and we don't have to go through that stuff again. But yeah, it's hard to see how anything in Tennessee 7 is going to improve over the next year. And in these other districts, they're now even further in play. So, yeah, I think if you're a Republican office holder right now, I still expect to see more retirements on the right.
Oh, yeah.
And even I would not be surprised at all to see 2 or 3 like Marjorie Taylor Greene resign in the middle of their term, early next year, because I think they're all going to go home. They're going to do the holidays. I'm talking Christmas now and New Year's and all that in the district. And they're going to be sitting there with their family and going like, am I really going to do this one more time for this, with this guy? And I think some of them are going to just say, hell no, I'm done. But we'll see.
Well, especially the people that want to keep going in politics.
Yeah.
Like they don't want to be tied to this.
Yeah.
By the way, this does get to a listener question. I have a fun little game for us to keep playing, but I do want to get to one listener question. We're talking about the House and people coming back next year. Joe, is there any way we get a healthcare deal? Because by the way, we're starting to get up against the clock again in the January deadline with everything going on in the GOP House caucus, people pointing out the whole NDAA authorization, Stefanik trying to be a rebel. Like, it is not looking good for Mike Johnson right now, but I think more to the point, they have no reason to even try, right?
No, I don't. I was talking to Rokana today, and he was just astonished that they don't seem interested at all on the Republican side to address it. I mean, more. He wasn't. Obviously, none of us are shocked, but I mean, he just can't. It's like it doesn't make any sense, right? They could extend the benefits, the tax extension for like for like a year, and even stick and not extend it for anybody making over 250 a year, something like that. Democrats would accept it, and they just don't seem interested at all in trying to come up with anything like that, which by the way would take the issue off the table. Actually, Democrats are willing to do that to save health care for people, even unlike Trump, who didn't want immigration reform because he wanted to use immigration in the election as an issue, and he wanted the problem to be big as hell so he could campaign on it. They're doing the opposite because the Democrats would be willing to save people's health care and give them the win, but right. Which would take that pressure off in all these districts for them. That healthcare wouldn't be that they'd be able to say, I voted for that. But there's just, at least today, there's still not the votes there to put something like that through. So we'll see. It
does seem like, and we'll get to these because I have a few superlatives to hand out, but it does seem like the Republicans are missing what's kind of an easy win for them here.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point. This could be, but we'll see. Maybe they'll try to grab the brass ring at the last minute here and take the win. But it's a bullshit win that they'll cash in. But but that's only because Democrats want to save those the people's health care costs.
So I have had a decent amount of time very late at night to think in the last couple of weeks, as a lot of new dads can probably attest to. And I started thinking about what the biggest X of the year was. And as we start getting towards the end of the year, Trippi, I thought we could play a little bit of a year in review, and I just want your rapid fire thoughts on a few of these. And I have the advantage because I wrote these out already at some point last night. But so literally just like what we think the biggest X or the worst Y is. But Joe, I'm going to start with an easy one. Biggest scandal of the year. I mean, I'm going to go with Epstein. It's got to be Epstein, right?
Yeah, no, it's Epstein, but I also think and I think Ro Khanna and Massey deserve a lot of credit for. Obviously, the survivors, drove it, but to get 216 Republicans. I mean, how big an explosion this was. When you get 216 Republicans to join Ro Khanna and Democrats to release the files, the Epstein files. That's like, yes, it is. It is one, the biggest scandal, but two, it just shows that sort of proves how big it is because nothing has unified 216 Republicans and basically the entire Democratic Party in the House, other than the Epstein files. And I just think that does speak to, as this comes out more and more of it, as others are embarrassed or whatever happens as their names get released, it's going to be a scandal, I think, that's big and only going to grow, including the problems it causes for Trump.
I did read today is Spotify Wrapped Day, and one of the cutesy new features they put out in everybody's Wrapped is how old your listening age is. And apparently on TikTok already, there's a bunch of Epstein jokes going around already, just in case people are wondering whether that's still a thing. Okay, Epstein's the biggest scandal. Yeah. I think we agree. Joe, the worst mistake that anybody made this year, I'm going to keep it in the political realm, otherwise we could be here for a while. I think it's how the Republicans have handled the Epstein stuff. I think they've really basically put fuel on the fire at every chance they got, rather than just throwing things open and getting on with it. Joe, I can think of a few others, but what do you think?
I think that's possible, possibly one. I mean, but I think there's an emerging competitor, and that could be the double tap with Hexeth and what's going on with the second strike, September strike on that boat where they killed two survivors. That if that's true, and we're just starting to see, the admiral is coming in to be grilled and all that stuff. But that thing is, I mean, both of them are horrendous, but the way they handled both of these, and that's what I'm saying, we'll see how they handle this. But if they handle it the way they handled the Epstein thing, then they're going to have two of these on their hands.
But do you think voters care at all? I mean, I think Trump is hoping they don't. We got a listener question about this too. Is there any chance the Pentagon gets punished for any of the Pentagon gets punished for what looks like a war crime? It's a war crime. It's actually just murder too. But that's
you're seeing Wicker in Mississippi, who's like by no means. I mean, he is hard right U.S. senator in Mississippi. He's breaking on this, and demanding answers. I don't know. This is one that I think is going to create. This is what's fascinating about this one. I think the Epstein files were more of a House of Representatives issue in terms of the discharge petition, getting everybody to come over. The thing that we still don't know whether the Senate would even bring it up. This one, what's amazing about it, or different about it, is whether there's any uprise in the House or not. It's clear that Republican senators, on armed services, intelligence, they are really ripped about this and want to get to the bottom of it. So it's going to be. In an interest, I just think it's going to be interesting to see if they continue to try to throw the military under the bus, instead of, right. And the president knew nothing about it. Of course, he didn't know anything about it, and neither did the Secretary of the War Department. We'll see where this goes, but I don't think that one's going away.
Okay. Okay. Now let's get a little more positive, Joe, on either side. And I can think of a couple here. What about the biggest win you saw this year? We're basically through specials for the year. We're through elections for the year. Let's just call this the biggest electoral win.
Uh, I don't know. It might be it might be the two public service commissioner wins in
In
Georgia.
Georgia.
They, it was two Democrats challengers facing two Republican incumbents. They both won. The Democratic challengers went by 300,000 votes or more. And, it was, I mean, it's Georgia. And by the way, it was the first time I think a Democrat had won a non-federal office statewide in Georgia in like something like 25 years, like since 2001 or so. And that kind of reminded me a little of, the parallel with Doug Jones in 2017, again, an off year kind of thing. And, when he won that, first time in 25 years that a Democrat won statewide in a Senate race in Alabama, you had that happen. Yes, it was Public Service Commission, but that's an office that hasn't been in Democratic. No statewide office in Georgia has been in Democratic hands since like the I think 2001. So that sort of stuck out in my mind that there's things things that are happening. And then you add that with obviously Virginia and New Jersey, which were two, and I guess the other one might be the 64 House seats, House of Delegate seats that were won in Virginia. I mean, 64 out of 100 seats. I mean, that was a massive flip. By the way, I mean, again, sort of corresponding with what we saw in Tennessee, Tennessee 7, we were just calculating, that's what happened. That's what happened with a +7, my friends. A +7 in Virginia ended up resulting in 64 out of 100 House of Delegate seats. So now you start, if this is starting, if the wave is actually sort of gaining momentum as more of these problems, including double tap and everything else. I don't know. I think when your Secretary of War decides is being accused not just by Democrats, but by bipartisan looking into whether he committed a war crime or not. Yeah, I think the American people they're going to pay attention to that.
I can think of a couple. I mean, you start looking down the ballot too. You look at things like city council races in places in like suburban Charlotte or some places in New York. There's starting to be some down ballot energy that you haven't seen from Democrats in a while because, as you and I have talked about at length, this party concentrates way too hard on odd year or even year elections, specifically presidentials. It does feel like this year, pretty much across the board, obviously we had a really good year, a lot of it in response to Trump. I think the biggest win was no matter what, in all these races, and there was one constant, and it was blaming Trump for the affordability and economic crisis, which has absolutely happened. Their actions have accelerated everything, and voters are seeing it. And pretty much whether it's Syracuse, New York, or the Supreme Court races in Pennsylvania, or winning a couple seats back in Mississippi, breaking a Republican supermajority, which again, voters understand the significance of those things. I mean, all of that adds up to, I'm not sure I'd put one. We haven't mentioned Mamdani yet. I will say there is some, a lot of ink has been spilled on that one, but what were you going to say?
I think Mamdani gets the award for the best color scheme of the branded signs. That's what I think. That's like that's key. But no, in all seriousness, the one remarkable thing that we've seen two things in all of these contests is that in that overperformance, the one thing we weren't sure of was, is the overperformance people switching, and how much of it is turnout driven. In other words, where the energy's been more Democrats turning out, Republicans staying home, and then that broadens that generic gap, and you win bigger than people thought and beat the generic spread. The interesting thing about Tennessee may have been a very instructive in that to answer that question, because yes, she outperformed Harris by literally 14 points, 13.7, but did it with a turnout that equaled the midterm, not a special turnout. That turnout in Tennessee 7 equaled the turnout in the midterm in 2022 in that same district. In other words, this was not a special election turnout. This was a massive turnout. And so in that, you'd have to believe that a lot of that 13.7 was Democrats and independents, which we saw in Virginia and in New Jersey, how they
Right.
but they voted, and probably in higher numbers than they were showing than they would have in other, so that what happened is, I think Democratic energy is higher and theirs is diminishing. And I think, again, as the economy and everything else and these scandals continue to broaden out, there's a good chance they're going to diminish even further on their energy. And so, we'll see. But I was just amazed at the turnout in Tennessee 7. It was anybody should go, just, if you don't take my word, check it. It equaled the turnout, not in a special, but in a midterm, the last midterm. So that's something that we got to keep our eye on, because if that energy's there, they're really in trouble.
I think if you look at it this way, historically speaking, in Trump years, high turnout has not been a good thing for Democrats. He has been able to bring out people who traditionally
When he's
aren't
on the
part of
ballot,
either
yeah.
coalition when he's on the ballot. This was a high turnout that was good news for Democrats. That I think, to put a finer point on what you were saying. All right, I got two more for you, and then we got to get out of here, man. We're almost at time. How about this is a fun one, and you're gonna look at me funny, so it's really fun. How about the best thing that shouldn't be a thing, but it's a thing? What I mean by that, Joe, because you are trying to parse that, is what thing in the world of politics this year really shouldn't be that big of a deal, but people are making it.
Oh yeah, well, Mandami for sure, that he wins
Yeah.
that award.
Well, right. And that's nothing against him. It's people trying to take that away from the city of New York, where it works
Yeah.
there, and then trying to do it in Kansas or something. That ain't going to happen, folks.
But what's going to happen is Abigail Spanberger is going to be the governor of Virginia, and Mikey Sherrill is going to be the governor of New Jersey. That basically what it says is that basically, I've always thought this. Generally, in most districts, the Democrat who wins the primary tends to be very representative of that area. And so, there's no way in Iowa, any Iowa district, that you're going to see a lot more of a Abigail Spanberger kind of candidate. I mean, it's just, and to try to Mondami the entire party is like
Right.
ridiculous. I mean, there's, you got your mayor of Chicago. I mean, there's all kinds of, which they're going to try to do this, but I just don't think it's going to work. And then you got everything else the president last night posted 106 posts in like a 4-hour period, all of them insane and like totally off the wall. The press, by the way, isn't covering that or sort of lifting that
course
up
not.
for everybody to see.
Yeah.
And then fell asleep. Then he falls asleep in the middle of his cabinet meeting. Why? Because he was up all night posting crazy shit on Truth Social. And now they're denying the double tap. I mean, the whole thing. I just think people have figured it out. At least independents for sure have. I mean, Democrats were always there, 95%, from the minute he came down the escalator. But independents, he won because he had enough independents, enough Latinos. He pulled enough black men, younger men, and every one of those groups is gone, totally gone. And I think in independence in particular, I just think none of this stuff, that's what I mean. It's more, we've talked about this before, Alex. It's like he has to keep feeding the MAGA alligator Alcatraz, be,
Right.
go into New Orleans now, go into, wherever and pick up people. And go into Minnesota and go after every Somalia in all 80,000 of them in Minnesota. And I just think the more he tries to feed that beast, the more he locks in the entire revolt among independents and moderates and even some of the subgroups that he was gaining with, like Latinos. Obviously they're gone. He's driving, the wedge he's driving is really creating these 13.7 mark, these, and I don't see how it comes back. Because if anything, all of this is going to get worse. I don't hope for that. We want people, I don't want the economy to crash here, but it's not going to, prices aren't going to come down in the next year, not with his policies,
nope,
not with the tariffs.
Not at all.
No.
So we'll get to a few more the next couple of weeks, but Joe, we're just about out of time. Anything you want to hit before we get out of here?
No, man. Congrats and best wishes to you and the family. And thanks for coming back, Alex. I was worried about it. And, thanks everyone for listening or watching That Trippi Show. Make sure you join us at sez.us, SEZ.us. We're still trying to build the civil social network for real human beings. And by the way, that's needed now more than ever. This podcast will always be free and part of Lincoln Square. So check out the latest at lincolnsquare.media. And also, if you're listening to the episode on YouTube, please like and subscribe to get alerts when we post the next episode. You can always send us a question to thattrippishow@gmail.com or leave us a question in a review on iTunes. And it's Alex's job to collect the best of those and to actually ask them.
Yeah, stop saying the other
show.
episodes were that great.
What those? Wait, let me read a couple. Joe, your reason. No. Thanks for being back, Alex. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.